Every formula.
Coming at you live from Venus. Uncle Dre and Auntie Chris bring you Gangster Goddess Broad-cast.
Did you just call us girls?
I did.
We're not girls anymore.
We're not the Golden Girls?
No, we're gangsters.
We're broads.
We're gangster broads.
Okay.
Yeah. Not anymore.
I like that your husband just said that you were, instead of tick-tocking, he said you were tick-talking.
I'm tick-talking.
Can you tick-talk? Tick-talk.
Tick-talk.
Tick-talk, tick-talk.
No more.
Okay.
Yes.
Are we rolling?
Oh, well, always.
See?
The hammer.
Welcome to Gangster Goddess Broad-cast with Uncle Dre and
Auntie Chris.
we have a new show.
We do. Nervous.
So weird. I'm not really nervous though. I'm excited.
Yes.
We have been liberated. We have been busted and readjusted, which is kind of the name of our little world right now under the guise of Gangster Goddess.
Why do I always want to say that with you? Every time you stop, I just want to be in tune. Gangster Goddess.
Well, how much do you love our intro?
I love it.
With our logo lips. Those are Chris Kushner's lips, everyone.
They are.
Yes, they are. And that's my voice in the intro. It's a nice combination, a nice balance.
Yes.
The dirty dentist required her to have her lips photographed for the logo. Yes, I am the dirty dentist.
She is. She's not lying.
Anyway, I'm sure that some of you guys have seen our old podcast. We're really excited to be starting a new one. We're starting with season 2 of The Sopranos.
Episode 1.
We've already done season 1 elsewhere. I'm sure you can find that. But we kind of wanted to pivot a little bit. Chris, why don't you tell our fans out there
What?
our new flavor? Aside from being a Soprano rewatch, because of course I'm here, Adriana's here. I'm going to continue to bring you the Soprano rewatch. But what are some of the other things that we're interested in?
We decided to do a special segment called Busted and Readjusted. And that is our little baby that we've been wanting to do forever. And I've heard, there's been some press. Dre's talked about this before. So we're finally bringing it to light. And they're tragedy to triumph stories. And we're going to highlight some very special guests that we bring on and tell their stories and hear their stories of tragedy to triumph.
We've also been busted and readjusted over and over again. I think in life in general, we're constantly being busted and readjusted, which is why we're always learning and evolving and changing. And I think that, when we initially started out to do a Soprano rewatch, at first I was like, oh man, I don't know what I have to offer in that area, because we really wanted to.
Silly, but sorry.
Well, no, I mean, I really wanted to focus more on these sort of busted and readjusted stories. Yeah. But when I would watch The Sopranos and went back, I was like, okay. We really have a perfect backdrop to tell these stories, because these characters are constantly busted and readjusted. And how evolved is Tony Soprano, strangely enough. You're taking a mafia guy in a subculture where they're very close-minded. It's everything kind of goes by the rules of the mob and the family and the Italian, their Italian heritage. And he was so evolved. Yeah. Through his, imagine if he had spirituality. Imagine if he had become someone who meditated. It would be a whole different thing. But instead, he was seeking out his what do we call it? Trying to face his demons with a therapist. Mob bosses can't do that.
No,
that doesn't generally happen. But anyhow, he was a very evolved character, in my opinion. He wasn't just a regular these and those kind of guy. And today, because we have started our busted and readjusted sort of theme and series on this show, we have a really special guest.
We do.
And we're really excited about it.
So excited.
Yeah. And
nervous, excited, everything.
Yes. And he has a major busted and readjusted story. Clearly not a man who could have gone into therapy without having gotten probably clipped. His name is Michael Franzese.
He's one of the only members of the mob that actually was able to walk away publicly unscathed.
Welcome to our very first Gangster Goddess Broad-cast, brought to you by our awesome sponsors, HelloFresh and
Tushy.
Wow, that was very sexy.
Tushy.
Anyhow,
I love it. Tushy.
Thanks to HelloFresh for supporting Gangster Goddess. HelloFresh offers fresh, high-quality ingredients every week for a super flavorful experience. Over 90% of ingredients are sourced directly from growers to ensure the freshest recipes are delivered to your door.
Go to hellofresh.com/GG80 and use the code GG80 to get a total of $80 off your meal,
That's awesome.
including free shipping on your first box. That's amazing. Do it.
Yeah, it's yummy. Then
That's
take
good.
yourself over to your toilet after you've eaten your delicious meal.
Mhm.
And another
Tushy.
word from our other sponsors. Thanks to Tushy for supporting Gangster Goddess Broad-cast. Tushy is a sleek bidet attachment that clips onto your toilet and sprays your butt clean with fresh water.
Yes.
And it's the best thing you can do for your butt. And it starts at only $79. Go to hellotushy.com/goddess to get 10% off.
I love that.
Go to hellotushy.com/goddess to get 10%
See,
off.
I'm just gonna say everything you say.
We're really silly, guys.
Stupid, silly.
Anyhow, enjoy our show.
This is a big deal. I'm so excited about having him on.
Me too. I mean, in the 80s
there's
with
so many
all the
questions.
RICO
Yeah.
things going on, the fact that he didn't end up in prison for 200 years.
No, and he's turned his life around. He embodies this busted and readjusted theme that we're going to go throughout
Yeah.
this whole all these segments. I mean, he really pivoted.
Yeah, and not just in a way where like he cleaned up his life and it was okay and he's living a normal life now. He's actually using his life, which is what we do with this show, The Sopranos, because we always call it a relate instead of a rewatch because we try to relate to all of the issues on the show. He takes his mob story and his history, and it's not so much that he's telling the story to amuse people, even though a lot of people who interview him really just want that story.
Yeah.
Chris
Who'd
and
you
I-
kill? Where'd you bury the money?
Yeah.
All those silly questions that, yeah.
we
people
want those. We want to know those things too.
Of course.
But we're more interested in how he turned his life around.
He was a real captain, a real life captain.
He was also extremely famous in the mob for being the Forbes. He was on the top of the Forbes list for one of the wealthiest mafiosos in history.
At 35.
At 35, he was bringing in $8 million a week for a tax fraud scam with wholesale propane. So we had gas stations. It's kind of a genius scam. We're not going to talk too much about it because we're going to let him tell his story.
Yeah.
But our interest in him was that he really turned his life around. And now he's a motivational speaker and possibly even becoming a life coach. He has many books out about his life.
Tons of press.
He's been married for 35 years. He has 7 children, a lot of daughters. So he's definitely on the hot seat a lot of the time. Yeah. He went from one jail cell to another with a lot of daughters because, we know what it's like to be a daughter and a wife and a, sister, all those things. Abroad. Anyhow, yes, we're very excited about having him on today. And we shouldn't really talk. Oh,
let's get into it.
Before he comes on, can I just tell you one quick thing?
What?
Because I don't want to ask him all the mafia questions because I don't want to be a total mayonnaiser like the Cusimanos. People always ask him about Jimmy Hoffa. Yeah. Because that's, the big mob ties to Jimmy Hoffa. And people ask him about the Kennedys and the Kennedy assassination and all that sort of stuff. He said in an interview that his father was constantly being put in jail over and over. Yeah. And he got put away for for masterminding a bunch of bank robberies. He wasn't guilty. He was guilty of a lot of other things. His father was in jail till he was, I think, 102 or 101.
Yeah.
And he died at 103, which is amazing. God bless him. But the reason why they think that the feds were all over him all the time was because his father had an affair with Marilyn Monroe.
Oh, we gotta get into all of
I
it.
know.
Yes.
I don't know if I want to ask that question.
I
But
do.
supposedly that was the case. And I don't know if he knew the truth about it, but I think his dad told him that story, that they had an affair. So the Kennedys were all over him
Oh,
and they
wow.
just, were nagging at him. And I mean, his dad went to jail just for associating with a felon.
I know.
It was constant. So anyway.
Let's get into the episode.
Okay, let's
I'm
get Michael
so
here. Let's
excited.
get Michael
Get
here.
him
Come on.
on Zoom. Let's do it.
Okay.
Let's get him on Zoom. Thank you so much for joining us and taking time.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it, really.
This is going to be different from a lot of the interviews that you've done. We've seen some of them. I don't know if this is your first chiacchierone interview, because we're a couple of chiacchierones,
Oh my God.
I know everything is...
First.
It is? I had a feeling. So, I know that... I don't know if you remember in season 1 of The Sopranos, the Cusamanos, they call them the mayonnaisers, right? I think when people interview you, they're kind of like the mayonnaisers. Yeah. They want to hear your mob story. They just want to get this story out of you. And she and I are more interested in busted and readjusted stories. So what a better perfect fit for our opening episode to have you, because we love your story so much.
Thank you.
And I know I was talking about the Cusamanos on The Sopranos, the mayonnaisers, right? And how they wanted Tony to tell their mob story and their this and that. And we want to ask you those questions because my grandfather was, I didn't know him. My grandfather, I'm wondering if you might know him because I didn't know him, but my family was in that family. My mom came out of that. And so we're going to want to ask you those questions because our fans definitely want to hear that stuff too. But we're also really interested in the other side of the story.
And how you pivoted.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And, the female kind of questions as opposed to the money laundering kind of questions. So it'll definitely be a different interview. And if we make you uncomfortable, just tell us to just say, listen, calm down.
Give us this.
I
Give
will.
us this side.
I wonder how many people know what "gacchiarone" means, though.
Listen, this is why we're here together. We don't want to talk to anybody else. Half the actors who even play these parts, they don't know what a chiacchierone is.
Right. I heard that all my life. You too, I assume.
Oh, yeah. I grew up in, as a little kid crawling around the floor at Rayo's.
Oh.
I remember crawling around on the floor and seeing all the guns strapped under the tables. And I was like, well, what is this? Mm-hmm. So my world crossed into that because of my mom's dad, who was this guy named Joe Babes. He ran with like Trigger Mike and all of these kind of guys. And he died young, but they called him Joe Babes because he was involved in a shooting over Dutch Schultz with where a baby was shot.
Oh my God.
So they called him Joe Babes. But my mom always told me they called him Joe Babes because he was a womanizer. Well, he was a womanizer too, but that wasn't where his name came from. And he was a big heroin wholesaler, which is no bueno in our world. So anyway, that's my backstory. And we are really excited to have you here.
Yes, we are.
And
let's get into it, right?
Yes.
Some questions. Where were you born and raised?
Where was I born and raised?
Yeah.
In Brooklyn, Greenpoint, Williamsburg section, and lived there for, a good many years. And then we moved out to Long Island. My dad didn't want to move, but my mom kind of wore the pants with respect to where we lived. So we moved out of there. I was about 10 years old.
Now, am I allowed to ask this question? Because I mean, it's out there in the world, but I don't ever want to make anybody uncomfortable because I know these aren't the questions that the dudes ask you when you're interviewing. The story with your mom and Frank Grillo and then your dad, Sonny. I have a similar story to that with my dad. A lot of his kids are coming out of the woodwork now that he's passed. So I have all these new brothers. And the same thing on my mother's side because my mom's dad was a made guy. But what was that like when you were young? When did you find out that that Grillo wasn't your dad? Is that the story? Can you tell us the story?
It's a little different than that. The only father that I really knew was my father, Sonny Franzese.
Mm-hmm.
And just going back, my father met my mom when she was 16 years old. He was 17 years older than her. She was a hat check girl over at the Store Club. I'm sure you remember that, but you certainly know the name. And he used to frequent there. You know, it was pretty much of a mob hangout for quite a while. And they fell in love. My father was married at the time, and he had 3 children from that marriage. So, and back then, I don't know if you know this, Drea, but back in my father's day in the 40s and 50s, you weren't allowed to get a divorce if you were in that life. Couldn't get a divorce.
I know.
You know that. So, my dad stuck it out, but he had this affair relationship with my mother. And then my mother somewhat, I heard, got disgusted, and she married another guy, Frank Grillo. And somewhere in that time, I was born.
Okay.
Now, and then a few years later, from what I understand, my dad, Sonny's first wife, ran off, just took off and left him with the 3 kids. At that point in time, he was allowed to get a divorce. He went to the boss at that time, and they said, okay, under these circumstances, you can divorce her. So he divorces her and marries my mother. And I'm already there. So and this was like I was 3, 4 years old. So I didn't know anyone.
You were a baby.
Yeah, I was a baby. I didn't know anyone else. And, but I had the name Grillo for a while. And then my father changed that name. Then he legally adopted me. And he was the only father that I knew. So, but I always was told that Frank Grillo was my real dad. So that's who I believe. But I never met him. I never seen him. I really didn't know who he was. But then what happens, this was very strange. A couple of things happened. I was working at a place by Kennedy Airport, on Rockaway Boulevard. It was called a Big Bow. It was a restaurant. A friend of ours owned it. And this guy walks in that day, and he's kind of staring at me, and I'm staring at him. And something happened between us. I realized later that was Frank Grillo. It was him.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Wow.
No.
We never said anything
The
to
energy,
each other.
you just
We never
felt
said
it.
anything to
Wow.
me. I actually served him something, took his money from the
Boy,
register.
the chills.
Oh, my,
Yeah,
me
we just had
too.
Oh.
kind of connection. And that was the end of that. But I did find out later that was him later on. But, then something crazy. I go through my whole life, and Sonny is my father, and that's the only father I knew, and so on and so forth. And then I write this book called Quitting the Mob. I actually wrote it with a co-author way back in early 90s. And the author interviews my mother, and my mother tells him a story that she never told me or never told anybody else. And she said, that I was really Sonny's child, that back in that day when she got pregnant, my grandmother was extremely upset. She married Grillo just so that, you couldn't have a baby out of wedlock back then. It was embarrassing.
Oh, no.
Wait, we argued about this, and we were both kind of right.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
So, she says, and I'm really Sonny's son. And I called her up and I said, Ma, it's nice that I have to find this out in the afterword of my own book. I said, all these years later. And she said, well, what's the difference? You said, the only father I said, well, there is kind of a difference, Mom, and let me know, something like that. But I never did anything about it. And as far as I was concerned, Sonny was my dad, and I loved him. And I know that Frank, they called him Chubby. He died in 1975. He died young. He was like 44 years old, I believe. So that's really the story. I mean, he was the only father I really knew.
Wow.
I know it's crazy and it's kind of unbelievable, but that's the way it played out.
Yeah.
Oh, I have stories just like that in my family. So I feel like I'm listening to one of my family members right now.
Yeah, it must be an Italian thing, Dre. I don't know.
Oh my God. My great grandmother was the only abortionist in the 50s in Harlem, and she was a midwife, but she ended up and the made men did not like her because to them this was murder.
Sure.
But then again, she had more dirt on everyone from Washington to the mob because they were coming to her for, if they were caught with their pants down sort of thing. So she was helping all these people, but she had information and gossip on everyone. So she became almost in her own way a made woman in the neighborhood. And eventually the mafiosos like Trigger Mike and all these guys, they were coming to her because they needed her help. But what she would do a lot was she would bring these women out to Jersey and Long Branch and bring them to full, she would have them give birth. She would rather save their babies. And then she would place them all around the neighborhood and no one knew whose kid was whose.
Wow.
So that was happening in East Harlem back in their days. But anyway, that's just me trying to relate little things here and there to my
Well,
little
it's good.
connection to that world.
Yeah.
I want to hear more about your dad, Sonny. I'm sorry for
Yes.
your loss, by the way. I know that
Yeah.
he passed not too
Thank
long
you.
ago.
Thank you.
Yeah.
103.
103 years old. I mean,
Right on.
he obviously had a very strong will to live. I'll tell you, I'll try to sum it up, for my dad. My mom died in 2012, and dad was in prison as usual. So I go visit him. We tried to get him out to come to the funeral, but we offered to pay the marshals the whole bit, but they wouldn't allow it. So I go and see him afterwards, and they gave me a special visit in the attorney's room to talk to him about my mom passing away. And I go in there, and you got to understand, I don't think I've ever seen my dad depressed, ever, no matter what he went through, just never depressed. But that day, he was really down, really down. And I said, Dad, what's up? He says, what do I got to live for? He said, I spent half of my life in prison. I lost my daughter, my son. Now my wife is dead. We're married all these years. He went on and on and on and on. He said, I got nothing more to live for. So I looked at him and I said, hey, what are you getting, weak on me? He said, what? Right away it perked up.
Yeah.
I said, let me remind you of something. I said, Dad, we're in Judge Mishler's courtroom, okay, in April of 1967. Mishler looked at you and he just sentenced you to 50 years in prison. Now, I remember I was sitting right behind on the first row with my mother, and he looked at my dad and he said, Mr. Franzese, you want to address the court? You got anything to say? And he said, yeah, Your Honor. I'm gonna show you and everybody else, I'm gonna do the whole 50. That's what he told it. That was his response, right? Yes. So when I said that to my dad, he looked at me and he goes, damn right. He says, I ain't dying until 2017. He said, I even keep my word to that rat judge. That's exactly
Law of
what
attraction, man. He
You know
did
what?
it.
He left that prison exactly 50 years later. He did the whole
God. What a
to the
tough
day.
life. What a tough life for you.
That sums up my dad, and I tell you the truth, there was a time when I thought he was going to live to 110. You know what I believe, though, Drea, honestly? He died in February. He had gotten pneumonia twice and beat it. In February, we didn't know too much about this COVID-19 thing.
Yeah.
And
I was thinking about that for you.
Yeah, within 10 days, it was over.
Gone.
And I didn't think about it until afterwards. And I said, wow, I wonder if that's what really got him. He was in a home at that time, a veterans hospital, because he needed care, 24/7. But
of course,
I'm still thinking that it might have been COVID. Can't say.
Yeah, I thought that when I saw the date of his passing, I was like, wow, I wouldn't be surprised.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because
this thing has been around. But I mean, I've obviously read a lot about your dad also, because I read about all of this stuff all the time. So I'm not going to bombard you with those sorts of things, especially since your dad just passed. I don't want to torture you with
okay.
all that.
Yeah.
But anyhow, so back to you being at med school.
Yeah.
You're like a regular Michael Corleone here, right?
Well, I would say a little bit more intelligent.
You think you're like Michael Corleone? And I used to tease him. I said, wait a second. Michael Corleone was fictional. I'm the real thing. So maybe you better know me.
Exactly.
But I don't know.
Did you like having your cameo, even though it wasn't you, and they didn't pick a guy half as good looking as you in Goodfellas?
It's funny. I don't know why they stuck me in there. I mean, I knew Henry and I knew Jimmy Burke pretty well, but, it was a whole different crew. But I guess, at that time I had some name value, so they put me in the movie. Yeah, I was surprised. I mean, I had no idea. I'll tell you a funny story. My wife, she deals with this a lot differently than you might expect. Up until really recently, she never read any of my books. If a movie or a documentary came on that I was involved in, she would turn it off. She never asked me any questions. She didn't want to know anything. She said, look, I lived through enough. 8 years in prison, all the stuff we went through. I don't need to know all of that, So Goodfellas comes out, and I had just come out of jail. And I said to her, honey, let's go see that movie. A little nostalgia. I knew some of those guys. And she says, okay. So we go to the theater, and I love popcorn, right? I get my popcorn, and to me, the movie experiences, I like everything happening at one time. So we're watching the movie, and you know how it starts off. It's pretty graphic. And I'm saying, man, I think I made a mistake, bringing you up here.
Wrong companion.
Right.
Yeah.
So, at one point she looks at me and she says, is this what your life really was about? I mean, is this what you did? And I said, honey, come on, this is a movie. It's Hollywood. They make things up. Don't believe what you said. Just enjoy the movie. No sooner I say that, then that scene comes on, and there's Michael Franzese, and she looks at me and says, come on, honey, let's go. And we got up.
Oh, my God.
I don't know what else they were going to do, but it was kind of
scene.
surprising. I didn't expect to see myself in that.
Did she end up watching the whole movie all the way through
No,
another time?
She's never seen that movie.
Amazing.
Never seen
How
it.
long have you guys been together?
We were married 35 years this month.
Oh my God.
Oh, that's awesome.
Amazing.
Nice. Yeah, so she's been through it. She's definitely been through it.
Well, let me tell you something. I'm not going to comment on the Mob Wives, that old television show. We're not going to comment on that. But, there's a lot of women out that know the real story and what it's really about. And she's one of them. So,
Oh, wow.
as are you. I'm sure you know.
Well, we're actually, as much as we're interested in your story, us two, Kiakiadones, are also interested in her story if
We have
she
to have-
ever wants to come on. Because we're going to be
Yes.
doing a lot of female gangster things, not just women that were in that played a part in the mob, but also just women that have sort of overcome tragedy. I've been doing all this kind of research on, you're going to laugh at me probably, on the Drangheta. So there's all these women that have been like, and also just Trigger Mike and his story, which is such a morbid story.
Yeah.
And we'll ask you those questions later, just because Adriana got killed. We might have to ask you some questions that relate to females in that world, obviously.
Well, I have to tell you, people ask me all the time about, the mob life. And as you probably know, I speak with a lot of youth and I do a lot of ministry stuff with young kids and gangbangers and all of that.
Amazing.
And you know what I tell them? I said, look, the mob life, the gang life, I said, in many ways, they're evil lifestyles. And I want to be clear on this. I'm not calling the guys evil. I was one of them. I just happened to be very fortunate. And we did what we did during that time. But the lifestyle is evil because I don't know any family of any member of that life that hasn't been totally destroyed in many ways. My own family, not my wife and kids, but, my mother, 33 years without a husband. At the end of her relationship with my dad, I can only describe it as ugly because she blamed him for everything that went wrong in that life. I had a sister that died of an overdose of drugs. My brother was a drug addict for most of his life, became an informant, against my dad.
Oh,
I was going to ask
God.
you about that too.
Yeah. My other sister died young of cancer. And, the family was devastated. And so many of my friends in that life, their families went through so much. So, look, it's true that the life is glamorized at times. And I'll be the first one to admit that there were times I led a pretty glamorous life during my time in that life. But at the end of the day, people suffer and, all my friends are gone. They're either dead or in prison for the rest of their lives. So the way the government came down on us in the early 80s, mid 80s with the racketeering laws and the Bail Reform Act, the Sentencing Reform Act, they did a lot of destruction to that life and to families. So the women really tell the stories because they live through it. They live through it. My wife, she has a different perspective on it and she's terrific because, for some reason she stuck with me through a lot of stuff that I went through. It wasn't easy walking away from that life. And, she hung in there and that's pretty special.
How long, you said were you in prison? Did you say you were in prison for, how long were you in prison for?
I did 8 years.
How did you manage that? How did you manage 8 years when, all of the whole RICO, were you a part of the whole, the Giuliani thing was probably even before your time, right?
No, Giuliani, I was.
No, but the big Giuliani busts, were they before your time or was it at the same time?
You mean the mob commission case?
Yeah, when he just went, he was trying to get his stripes.
No, that was, as a matter of fact, he indicted me on a big racketeering case in 84.
Wow.
Yeah, and I was a lead defendant and I had 15 co-defendants on trial for several months. It was a big racketeering case. I was acquitted in that case. Rudy told me in the courtroom, he said, Franzese, if I convict you on this case, you're going to get double what your father got. I'm giving you 100 years. And that's the kind of time they were giving mob guys during that time.
Always.
And,
you with 8.
Yeah, it was crazy. Guys were getting 100 years, triple life, 300 years. And I said, man, if I go down on this, I'm one of the youngest guys here. They're going to give me a 500,000 years. It's
And
crazy.
if and with your father living till 103, forget about it.
That's right.
They
I might have to
sentenced you
spend
to
100 years there. Who knows?
Forget about it.
So they
But,
sentenced you to
yeah, I
10,
beat that
right?
case. And, you know, that was my fifth indictment, my fifth trial. And then they indicted me again in the Eastern District of New York on another racketeering case. And Drea, I'll tell you this. Giuliani actually saved me in many ways. He doesn't realize it, but what happened was
I got chills again. Why? No one says that about Giuliani, by the way.
Well, he doesn't realize he saved me, and he didn't want to, but it turned out that way. I'll tell you why.
How awesome is Michael Franzese?
Oh my God, amazing. But now it's time for a word from our sponsors. Chris, take it away. Tell us about HelloFresh.
Oh my God, I love them. I didn't even know anything about them before they supported our show, which is awesome. They come to your door. They have these everything is neatly packed in these little paper bags. So each meal is already done for you. You just dump it out on the counter and you have all these little packs and you have the recipe and it's done. The cleanup is easy.
Is amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, the best meats, the best produce. I can't believe that I never knew about this. I mean,
it's America's #1 meal kit. I
Yes,
mean,
it
I
is.
get it now 1,000%.
your kids like to cook it, right?
My kids love to cook it. And let me tell you, I've been looking for something like an activity for them. You can't go out, you can't go bowling, you can do it. So now we cook. Like my daughter literally said to me, can this be a thing that we do every night? So regardless of them sponsoring the show or not, I am in and I am ordering. You can get what, $80 off?
$80 off, yeah.
Well, I hope we can use that code too because I'm a lifer. I'm a HelloFresh lifer.
And you're doing the vegetarian chicken one, and I did the meat one.
Well, it's not a vegetarian, but it's a low-cal, and it comes with chicken and fish and veggies. And
I mean, you had bibimbap the other night. That's one of my
delicious,
favorite
and
dishes.
eggs,
I
and
don't
we
even know
did
how
it.
to make that.
I'm learning so much with all these recipes, and the kids are too. And now it's like we've all been stuck home for so long eating the same things, our favorite recipes, but it gets boring. And now we have options. It's things that we didn't know how to cook.
Yeah, I like putting the kids in the kitchen with the HelloFresh recipe and the food and saying, see you later. See you at dinner time. Just let me know when dinner's ready, okay?
Don't burn the house down.
I love it. I mean, this is also perfect coronavirus remedies because it's delivered to your house. You don't have to see anybody. You don't have to go to the grocery store. No. And then when you're done eating, you can go visit our other sponsors upstairs in the toilet.
Tushy. I love Tushy. Oh my God.
Can you get a little more excited, please?
I mean, wait till you sit on
wait, look at me.
No, I want mine. Wait till you sit on that toilet bowl. Wait till you tell me.
I love it.
Wait, you tell me.
It's my new favorite
You don't
thing.
get excited when you're on the Tushy bowl.
When you told me
Hold on.
that it was going to spray cold water on my butthole, I was very nervous.
Or your vagina.
Oh, it is the greatest feeling ever. I use it every time I pee. Forget about going to poop or something.
I do too. I totally do.
I use it every time I pee. It's my favorite thing.
I like to call Tushy Freshy because you get a freshy vagina and a freshy butthole after.
I don't know if they want you to call them Freshy. I think they want to be called Tushy.
We're going to call
them. And it takes the place of an annoying giant bidet next to your toilet, which we used to have growing up that we ended up just storing creams in.
That's weird.
But I'll tell you what, totally I loved my bidet. I love it.
Now you got the Tushy that's affordable for everyone.
$79.
And it looks cool.
Yeah, it's cool.
It's seamless.
And the towels that it comes with and the toilet paper, the bamboo, their whole packaging, by the way,
is amazing.
Is super awesome. Yeah. And I like their ad campaigns and stuff. Like they say something like, "Have you had enough of those douchebags?" Stuff like that. I mean,
well,
I love it. Yeah.
Men and women, it's great for No. Oh my God. Okay, let's go. We're done with this. Let's get back to Michael Franzese.
I love my Tushy. I love my Tushy.com.
I love my Tushy.
And you can get a discount if you...
I love your Tushy.
We're known for our Tushies, by the way. So keeping them fresh and clean.
Get up. Let's see your Tushy. Let me smack that Tushy.
Let's see that Tushy. Come on. Let's see your Tushy.
Nope.
Come on.
No, let's go. Do your whole call to action.
I fell in love with you because of your Tushy.
Let's go.
And the mouth.
Do it. So where are we going to get it? 10% off? What?
Oh, yes. I must look at my piece of paper here. Go to hellotushy.com/goddess.
Oh, I love it.
hellotushy.com/goddess.
How much do we get off? Do you know?
Oh, 10%?
10%.
Yeah.
10%
I was right.
off.
I remembered.
Amazing.
For someone who's 180
For a
years
clean
old.
tush, go to Tushy. Get your 10% off.
You're not going to show anybody your tushy?
Nope. They'll have to wait.
I want to see that ass. That ass.
No.
I'm going to smack it when you get up.
Oh, Jesus.
Let's get back to Michael Franzese.
Please.
I was involved in a whole gas tax scheme and all of that.
Yes.
Which I want you to tell our listeners about,
Sure, we can
when
get
you have a
into-
second.
My partner, the guy that constructed the whole scam with me, turned informant. And
He did.
He did.
So and he was in Panama hiding in your compound.
He was in Panama hiding, and the feds went in there and kidnapped him because there was no extradition from Panama. They went in there in the middle of the night, kidnapped him, brought him to Florida. It's an unbelievable story. And once he got there, he became an informant. So they were saving him in the Eastern District to testify against me about all this gas stuff. And when Giuliani found out about him, I was on trial at that time in Manhattan. And when Giuliani found out, he wanted that witness in his case. So you know how government goes. They fight with one another. The Eastern District and the Southern District were fighting over producing him at that trial. Giuliani wins, and Irizzo comes and testifies against me in the Giuliani case. I get acquitted. The jury didn't believe him. So now I had leverage for the second case because we already destroyed their principal witness against me. And that's how I was able to negotiate a plea. And believe me, when I got 10 years, it was like guys were congratulating me. Michael, don't even take your shoes off. 10 years was like,
You're good.
yeah,
It's a
it
nap.
was the best thing that
Take a
ever happened.
nap. Go work out. Yeah. You
Really
look like you're
Take your shoes off.
Getting shaved, and, be home before you know it. Then I got a $15 million fine and restitution. They said, don't worry, you can afford that. Just, do a couple of years and you're home. So it was huge. And the fact that I got acquitted in that Giuliani case gave me all the leverage with the government on the next case because I had beaten them 5 times. They didn't want another loss. That I know.
Yeah.
Wow.
Amazing.
So what did Time Magazine said, if he holds to what he has promised, it will mark the first time that a high-ranking member of the Mafia will publicly walk away from his past. And you walk away unscathed. Are you not looking over your back like the final scene of The Sopranos all the time?
Well, let me try to explain it. I mean, there's a practical reason for that. I'm a person of faith, so there's a faith-based reason. But the practical reason is this. When I did walk away, I had a lot of trouble. I mean, my former boss, Persico, was extremely upset with me because he took it very personal. His son, Ali Boy, was my Gumbada. He baptized my oldest boy. So, I mean, we were very close, and he really was upset. Had he been on the street, Drea, I might have had a lot more trouble because he was an old timer, and he was a pretty treacherous guy. I had to watch out for Junior. Even though I loved him, and I know he liked me at one point, I knew that when I crossed that line, I'd have trouble. But here's what happened. The government was playing me dirty. They were trying to get me to cooperate. They were putting my name on the witness list of trials that were going on in New York to try to put heat on me to get me to cooperate. But then these trials kept coming up, and I never showed up. I never appeared. Then I do my 5 years. I'm out on parole. I was basically dodging bullets during a parole time. Then I violate my parole. I go back in. So now people are saying, this guy isn't going to testify, but he's not supposed to walk away anyway. So now the heat is off me in that regard because people are saying, all right, he's not hurting anybody. That was never my intention. And then what happens? Everybody's got their own troubles. Everybody that I know was indicted for racketeering, who went to jail, who had this to worry about. So I move out to California. I could have never made it in New York. There's no way I would have survived. I move out to California. I change my entire lifestyle. What do I mean by that? Look, one of the horrors of that life, you make a mistake, your best friend walks you into a room, you don't walk out again.
You're done.
Obviously, I spent a lot of years in that life, and I'm well aware of that situation. So what I said to myself, hey, they're going to get me. They're not walking me into a room. They're going to have to work to get me. So I move across country. I change my whole lifestyle, meaning I don't create patterns in my life. I don't walk my dog every morning at 7 a.m. I don't go to the same restaurant every Tuesday night. I stay out of clubs. Bad place for me. I know who hangs out in those guys in those places. I'm pretty well known. Somebody makes a call to New York. I walk out in the parking lot. Boom, I'm gone. So I was very disciplined because I had a lot of experience. I knew exactly what the guys would do, what they wouldn't do. And remember, it's one thing to walk a guy into a room. It's another thing to send a hit squad across the country, try to kill somebody, and then get away with it. Somebody that's aware of what's going on. So, and then I just outlasted everybody. I mean, everybody I know is gone. So the new guys, they don't have the axe to grind with me. I'll be honest with you, I can't go back to Brooklyn and say, hey, guys, I'm moving back into the neighborhood. I mean, that wouldn't be very smart. But, I believe in God. He doesn't tell you to be stupid. You got to use your head. So, that's basically the story. I've just been very, very fortunate. It just, I didn't know how it was going to work out. There's no blueprint for walking away from that life. But I just knew one thing. I wasn't out to hurt anybody, Drea, and they couldn't convince me to do that. And I had even told my dad when I was in prison, I said, Dad, you're not going to like what I'm doing, but I got to preserve my family and my life. I said, I just married this young girl. She's 21 years old. What am I going to do, marry her and go to jail for the rest of my life? We already had a child. I said, this life is in trouble, man. I said, they're putting guys away forever. Guys are becoming informants left and right. Guys that I did business with for 30 years were informants that we didn't know about.
So in the 80s, it just all fell apart.
It just all fell apart, and guys just weren't prepared for it. I mean, it was devastating. There's no doubt about it. And I just one of the fortunate ones. That's all I could say.
Where did you find God? When did you find your faith?
Well, my wife was a very strong believer. My mother-in-law, very strong believer. It's amazing, two people that had the most dynamic influence on my life, other than my dad, were really my wife and her mother. Very, very strong in their faith, and they had a major impact on me. And initially I wasn't buying into it, but after I got out of prison, I was on parole for 13 months, violated my parole and went back in, and they put me in a hole, and they told me I would never see the street again. Feds were really upset with me because I wouldn't cooperate. And they said, you're going to spend the rest of your life here. We got new witnesses. We're bringing up new stuff. And, they threatened murder and all this kind of stuff on me. And, it was that first night in solitary. And I was no stranger to prison. I visited my dad my whole life. I was in already 5 years. I was arrested 17, 18 times. So I was no stranger to that. But it was the first night that I really felt that my life is over. Everything that's dear to me is gone. I have no hope. I don't know how to get out of this mess I put myself in. And it was a bad night. I'll be honest with you. And it was that night, a prison guard just happened to, he came to my cell and he says, Franzese, you okay? You don't look good. And I said, get away from me, man. Don't bother me. I don't want to see any of you guys tonight. He came back and slipped the Bible in the slot of the door.
Oh, wow.
And it just started from that point on. And I was in lockdown for almost 3 years. They had me in a hole.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was actually 29 months and 7 days. You count those days.
You had your dark night of the soul for quite some time there.
Yeah.
In the hole.
Well, Dre, I'll tell you something. I'm not going to make any bones about it. That's tough. We were not meant to be solo creatures. We were meant to be solo.
No, look at us now. Yeah,
And,
we're Italians. We're Italians on top of it.
Exactly. And, I know a lot of guys did not do well in that situation. Those lights go out at night. You hear a lot of stuff going on. And I don't know. I mean, maybe I got some of my father's strength in that regard. But I just had a great will to get out of there. I was very motivated. My faith played a major role in it during that time. And, we just got through it.
You were raised Catholic, probably, just like the rest of us, right?
Of course. I was an altar boy the whole bit.
Yeah. And then you chose Christianity after that. I'm one of these I guess you'd call it an omnist to a degree. But Jesus Christ is still, that's what I was raised with myself, Catholic schoolgirl, the whole thing. But I don't really go with the Catholic Church necessarily, but
my dad was Catholic.
Mom's Christian,
and my mom was born again Christian. So I had like the dual. And by the way, it was always a fight in my house. What church? My dad it was a whole thing. So you were obviously raised Christian.
Yeah, no, I was raised Catholic.
Catholic. Sorry.
yeah.
Yeah.
My parents weren't religious. I don't ever remember going to church with them unless it was a funeral or a wedding. It was just me. They put me in Catholic school because they thought at that time you get a better education in a Catholic school than you did in a public school. That's really what it was all about. I went to Catholic school from kindergarten right through high school. So,
Me too.
yeah, it was an experience.
I watched a video of you preaching at the Oasis Church. I've been there
Oasis,
before.
yeah.
Yeah, out here.
Pastor Philip, do you go there?
I've gone a couple, when my mom comes out, I'm definitely going. And now I'm not going because we're in quarantine, but here and there.
Philip Wagner was I think he's
Phil.
he's a great friend of mine, Philip and Holly, and great guy, really great people.
Yeah, it's a great church.
Okay, so let me tell you the quick Sopranos story. All right?
Yes, I want to hear
yes.
this. This is David Chase. I've heard you talk about this, so I'm dying to hear about it. Go.
Here's the deal. I'm out on parole, and Howard Baldwin, I don't know if you know who Howard is, but he's a producer. He did a bunch of things. He used to own the Pittsburgh Penguins, the hockey team. He was a really good friend of mine. So when I get out on parole, he was over at Universal Studios. He had an office there. And he said to me, Michael, come to my office. I want to keep you out of trouble. Don't go anywhere. Stay in here and read scripts. I said, to Howard, he said, no, I'll give you mob scripts. Read them for me. I said, okay. So I'm sitting there. We were right next to Steven Spielberg's place there. And I'm there every day reading scripts. I get a call from Jack Gilardi. I don't know if you know Jack, was the agent with ICM.
I know that name.
Yeah, he was a dear friend of mine. Just passed away last year. And he says, Mike, some guy, I think his name is David Chase, called, and they're doing a show for Fox, and he wants you to be a consultant on it. And I said, really? I said, what's the show about? And he kind of told me a New Jersey family, so on and so forth. So I said, all right, let me think about it. And then I talked to Howard, and Howard says, come on, Mike, that's a conflict in what you're doing. You just got out of prison. You don't need any more, focus on you. I said, yeah, Howard, you're right. And I let it go, right? So now, that's how stupid I was, really. I should have got involved. But anyway.
You would have had fun. You wouldn't have had to say anything. Everybody was behind the curtains.
It would have been fun. But anyway, so now Fox doesn't take it. HBO does. And I watched the first season. And I see Tony's mother. Wasn't it Olivia?
Yes.
Olivia. And I'm looking at her and I'm saying, my God, this reminds me so much of my mother, this character.
Oh, poor you,
now
Michael.
Oh, my God.
My mother was, listen, I love her, charming, sweet,
Tough.
but she was manipulative. And I'm telling you.
Oh, yeah.
So now I'm saying, okay, why did David call me? And then I'm thinking, Drea, listen to this. Now, I might be totally off base, might be a coincidence, maybe nothing to it at all. I have no proof of nothing, but it's striking. When my house was built in 1960, they put a bug in the kitchen of the house, right? And for about a year, that bug was active. And it got a lot of stuff between my mom and my dad and all this kind of stuff. And I'm saying, I wonder if David, in his research, got a hold of this tapes because they were public. And he patterned this woman on my mother. And maybe that's why he called me. Now, I kept thinking more and more. Now, I might have talked myself into it. You talked to David, and maybe no truth to that at all. But I said, how did he nail my mother in this character? It was unbelievable. So anyway.
I thought the same thing about my grandmother. I said, oh, my God, it's my grandmother.
I have an Aunt Sarah.
Yeah. I mean, but it's a kind of a rare matriarch in the Italian life. Don't you agree? It's a rare prototype. Because they're usually, you're the prince, you're everything, the male child. So I, at first with the Sopranos, I had a hard time even relating to that. But then my mother looked at me and she goes, "But that's my mother, Dre. That's what my mother was like," and it's true. They were very similar. But man, that would have been cool if you were consulting. I think they ended up having mostly. Like ex-FBI or ex-cops or stuff like that consulting more. I think Frank Renzulli, one of the writers, he had a lot of good information, but I don't know who ended up consulting. I was a kid back then, so to me, I was still focused on things like walking through the back room of the Copa. We were busy, like you. I'm referencing you here. Yeah. We were walking through the back rooms of every place. I mean, we really thought we were in the mob, or the Beatles. We couldn't figure out who we were
right.
when the show got popular. So yeah, I don't remember who was doing all that, but I love that story. And I remember hearing that.
And Christina, I have to say, every time I mention your name, because my mother's name was Christina,
Oh, okay.
and my daughter and my sister. So that's a name that's very dear to me.
So you got it.
How many girls do you have?
I have 5 daughters.
Do you have any sons?
I have 2 boys. I have 7
Wow.
altogether.
God bless you.
Wait, weren't
Thank
you?
you.
Don't you
God
have
bless you.
7? Aren't you one of 7 siblings too?
I'm one of 7. My wife is one of
So
7.
that's
Now,
your
let me blow your
That's your
mind.
lucky
I'm
number.
one of 7.
Yeah.
My wife's one of 7. I have 7. Her
Jesus.
father, my wife's
That's your
father, is one
number.
of 23. 23, and my father's one of 19.
Oh my gosh.
So we could never really have a family gathering without having, a huge hall or something. It's crazy.
That's how we were too. Every party was at least 500 deep, like for a big party, like a wedding.
Yeah, my father's
Yes.
one of 7 too. So
Yeah,
I
my
get
dad's
that.
one of 6, one of 6.
And we
Yeah.
only have 2 kids each. So
Yeah,
we stopped.
You have 2 each?
I mean, 2. I have 2 and she has 2. Yeah.
Boys,
I
girls?
wasn't. We both have each a boy and a girl.
Well, that's great. That's jackpot time when you get one of
Yeah.
each.
Then that's why you finish. You're like, I have 1 boy, 1 girl. I'm done.
If I would have started earlier, I would have had a family of 6. I regret that I didn't, but I was really trying to follow in my mom's footsteps of you need a career first. Don't you don't want to be a housewife yet. You don't want to be, and you know what? I could have done it all. I definitely went for what she asked for because she tried to fight against the Italian stereotype in her day because she grew up with her dad beating up her mother and cheating and there was all kinds of he wasn't one of the best guys even within his rank and stuff. He was still not the best man at home either. So she really fought against it and she wanted to become an actress. He said, only putanas become actresses. So she ended up becoming a writer. And she only wrote really about the mafia and her experience with her father and her mother and what her mother went through and what she went through. So it was I like the whole female perspective on everything. So
Which is why we need your
my
wife.
the same way with our daughters.
Mhm.
She teaches them to be independent and
It's great.
it doesn't discourage them obviously from having a family, but she likes them having their independence. And all my daughters are very strong, very, very strong.
What ages are
I
they?
appreciate that. What's that?
How old are your kids?
They range from 21 to 41. Now, I was married once before for a short time. I had 2 girls and a boy from that marriage. And then we have 3 girls and a boy. But they're all very close. Thank God for that. They're all close. But my daughters are all strong. As a matter of fact, I don't like saying this, but I think my daughters are stronger than my boys, honestly. Yeah.
my dad would always say that too.
I kind of feel the same about my kids.
my daughter's the boss.
My daughter's younger
boss.
than she has an older
my
brother.
one daughter, Amanda, she graduates from all the girls graduated college, and she, except for one who's now going to be an actress and she's a dancer. She was just on World of Dance.
Oh my God, I love that
J-Lo.
show.
Yeah, with J-Lo. My daughter Julia
Awesome.
is an amazing, actress, the whole bit. But anyway, what was I saying? Oh, my daughter Amanda, she graduates from San Diego State, criminal justice major. She wanted to be a lawyer, tried to discourage her from that. I said, the advice I can give you, if you're a criminal lawyer, make sure you get paid up front, because if you lose the case, you don't get paid. That's it.
Yeah.
That was the best advice I gave her. But anyhow, at one time she comes to me and she's, Dad, I want to be a cop. I said, what?
Whoa.
She says, yeah, I want to be on a police force. And my daughter, you cannot change her mind. She is
this is your, yes.
mind. That's it.
This is your penance.
This is your
Yeah,
penance.
so I said, I tried to talk her out of it. She says, why? I said, Dad, don't you understand the irony in all of this? I mean, I don't want you to
It's great.
Anyway, she's going to be a cop. So I call
she
a
really
friend
is.
of mine. Well, no, I call a friend of mine. He's the second in command of Beverly Hills Police Department. And I said, look, I can't change my daughter's mind, so you got to watch her throughout all of this. But anyway, she ended up getting married and having a child. And fortunately, she was on the waiting list. She passed every test with flying color, ready to go in 3 different police departments. Then she got married, and she had a little boy who is autistic. So she decided to spend all her time with him and all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, getting married and having a kid, she still gets to be a cop, basically.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like
Still
I feel like I'm a
enforcing the
cop.
rules.
You know.
All
That's
the
true.
time. I'm a referee.
But yeah, my daughters
a
are all
cop.
very, very strong. Every one of them.
Amazing. I mean, how does this life compared to living? I mean, I know you want to get into it with the episode.
Well, yeah, just the regularness of
Yeah.
life. The Sopranos always attacks this theme on the show. It doesn't glorify it like, you know, something beautiful like The Godfather, which I know that I've heard you say that Joe Colombo had to fine tone, like had to go through the Godfather script, by the
Yes.
way, which I
Yeah.
thought was pretty interesting. Or
Yeah,
do
that's
the
a fact.
rewrites, right?
Yeah.
Well, he that's a fact. He took out any reference to the word mafia, and he took
Wow.
out specific things in there that were troubling to him, and he felt were degrading. And people said, "Well, do you think it was a good thing?" I said, "Well, you can't knock the movie. I mean, it was a tremendous movie, one of the most brilliant movies ever made. So whatever he did, he didn't hurt it. But yeah, that's a fact for sure."
Interesting, crazy. But anyway, the regularness of life with the Sopranos, which doesn't look like a Goodfellas. A Goodfellas is exciting, and there's that whole essence of the show being this so regular. The casting, for instance, like casting James Gandolfini as opposed to who they probably initially wanted was like Anthony LaPaglia. They really went for this every day. And it's a Jersey vibe. I know at this point the mob was probably already on the down, not really in its heyday and its glory days. But but there was still some excitement in, even when you watch like Donnie Brasco and you see Lefty's life, like that's still this very regular feeling life. It's not this it's not the back door of the Copa. You know what I mean? It's not the stuff that we hear about at the Stork Club and all that stuff. So, and even you I know you had your private Learjet, you had your helicopters, you lived quite a life. But, guys like Tony Soprano, he's middle class, upper middle class, rich, maybe, I don't know, but there's a regularness to everything. There's no fireworks. Everything is heavy, and there's psychological issues over the mother. There's therapy. So I guess what Chris was asking, and I always have to try to tie it into the show for our rewatchers, is do you feel like life, like the excitement of your life has whittled down, or do you just feel like relief at this point? Plus, I know you travel a lot with your faith, and you get to talk about that and reform, which for me is probably even more exciting than the other stuff.
Yeah. The rebirth.
Yeah, I can't say that it's a downer at all. I mean, look, I enjoyed the perks at times, having a plane and a helicopter and having the finances that I had. But I mean, I can't complain about my life now. It's totally different in many ways. But I've been fortunate that, it's just another phase in my life that became fun and exciting. It's like you say, travel everywhere. But, I think it's just normal. I'll give you an idea. I went to a doctor about a year ago. And I had this thing, sometimes men get it that their beard a little bit, they get a little space there. I forget what they call it, some kind of thing. And he said, well, that's stress related. Do you have stress? And I said, Doc, I don't know. I said, I don't know I don't even know what stress is. I've lived my life a certain way. There was always stuff going on all the time. So I just deal with life. I don't know if you call that stress or whatever, because my wife looks at me and she says, I don't know anybody that handles things like you. I mean, very little gets me a lot of disappointment in my life because I feel if something doesn't work out, it wasn't meant to be, and I just move on to the next thing. So, I love my life. I'm very fortunate. I really am. I can tell both you ladies that. I'm 69 years old at this point, and I've lived a lot longer than I probably should.
You look like you're our age.
I know.
Or younger than us, actually. I'm almost 50. She's young.
I'm not young.
Remember, my dad was 100. My dad I'm going to tell you this. My dad at 103 looked like he was in his 70s. So
that's great. Yeah. So you have good genes.
But and he always lied about his age anyhow. Until he got older, I said, Dad, it's legendary to be this old. So you have to start telling the truth about your age. That's when he turned it around. Other than that, he used to lie about his age all the time.
Then he was lying about it to make himself even older.
I tell everybody I'm older because I just don't want to deal with it. I'm like, I'm 50 already because I
You're not
don't want to have to
50.
deal with it. When I was a little kid, I wanted to get into bars and stuff. I was like, yeah, I'm 21.
Everyone, yes.
Yeah,
You
I know my daughters with all the phony IDs and all. I went through all that stuff. But
Oh my God.
I try to keep my kids straight, so that they don't get in any trouble because they got.
How strict of an Italian dad are you? Because my Italian dad loosened the reins with me because he didn't want me to grow up the way his sister grew up and the way my mother grew up. They loosened the reins too much with me, obviously, because I'm a crazy person. But
well, according to my daughters, I'm the strictest dad in the world. I don't know. I mean, I don't see it that way.
And what do they think about your past?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm very conscious of their boyfriends and who they bring home.
Of
course. And I demand certain things from them. They complain that I'm too old school, but I'm not going to change. This is who I am. And, they think I'm very strict, but I don't think so. I think my father was more strict with my sisters than I am with them. But, we have a certain standard that I try to keep. My wife says I'm a dinosaur sometimes, but, you can't change.
Yeah.
I'm pretty strict.
Yeah.
You have to be today. These are crazy. These kids are crazy today.
Yeah. Oh, no. I don't even let my kids out of my sight.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy out there.
Yeah.
I'm a crazy Italian mom. And, it's the only thing I love doing is being a mom and, just the housefrau.
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 That's a good thing.
Let me just ask you this, because I know we're talking a lot about your life and having like a regular style interview. I know that we do a Soprano rewatch. Do you want to go through the show with us? Because you absolutely don't have to. This show doesn't have that many, there's not a lot of subtext going on. So we're not going to be talking about big emotional things on the show, which was why we thought you'd be a great guest because it kind of relates to, just the way it opens, the way the show opens, all the different scenarios and stuff. And there's the whole pussy aspect with he and Tony Soprano, and he's an informant. And there's a lot of deception and betrayal in this episode. So if you want to go through it with us, we don't have to go scene by scene. We can just do
so we can skim.
Yeah, we can just do like a conversation about what the episode means. And you can also tell us what's real and what's not real, because I've seen you do that before. Yeah. Like what's BS and what actually seems like if you were the what was it, he wanted you to be not the consigliere but the what was the word? I can't. Well, this is what happens to me because I'm almost 50. If you were David Chase's
consigliere. He wanted me to be this consigliere.
If you were David Chase's consigliere, would you have said true, false to each of these scenes?
Absolutely. I have to tell you this, and it's kind of on the QT. I can't mention it, but the industry. I just signed a deal with a major production company, major writer, director on this, and that on a TV show based in part about my life and other experiences that I had. And they're not, and I'm really happy they're not announcing it. They don't announce development deals. They announce the deal once they make a deal with a network. But I'm really thrilled, ladies, with the team that they put together. Because, throughout the years, people have come to me, about making a movie and doing this. It just never felt right. And my wife really never wanted it. She said, we don't need that much more attention. But I said, more attention. I'm out there every day speaking and all over the place. But she was right about that. But now, the timing feels right. So as a matter of fact, I was on the phone with the writer for an hour and a half this morning because he's picking my brain like crazy.
I am more excited about your life story being made than even you are. Okay. And by the way, can they cast me as one of the wives?
Sure.
I play a perfect mob wife. Just don't kill me.
She's got some experience.
I just don't want to die again.
I want to say this, and I'm not, doing it but I really enjoyed your character. I really enjoyed the characters were, I thought, brilliantly done in that show. I thought Tony was great. I really do. And what really got me the most about the show was really the relationship, the family relationship. Yeah. Because for the first time, we saw that, these people are human. We're human. We have our issues like everybody else. And even though the lifestyle is totally different and it's hard for people to relate to it inside the home, a lot of stuff goes on. Like I've had issues with my children, my son was, gave me some trouble for years. And we have the same kind of things going on. And I thought that was the brilliance in the show. And it was great, tremendously cast, really.
Yeah, I always say that when on our last show, and maybe I should preface it again on this show because it's a new show, but the thing about The Sopranos was that, and especially when the Italian Anti-Defamation Society were cracking on us. Look, it was more press for us. It was great,
sure,
but it couldn't have been farther from, like, in my opinion, those were the Italians that were not literary and not understanding what was really happening, because people love this show on so many levels, and the fact that you, an ex-mobster, related to it on a familial level based on the relationships is mind-blowing, because everybody related to it for a different reason, which is why it transcended the whole medium of TV and everything. People loved it as a family show, but a lot of these Italians who thought they were too good for their own heritage, they thought it, they weren't looking beyond the gunshots. They were just looking at the subculture, which is a subculture that exists in our world. And it's part of our Italian heritage, and we can't deny it. Every race and every nationality has their dregs and their subcultures and their businesses and all of their stuff, and I'd rather examine that than examine some boring family with a white picket fence, because
absolutely,
you know what I mean.
The great thing about the show is that the really great thing is that it was groundbreaking in such a way that it really led the way for all these other brilliant series that are on the air now.
Yeah.
Sopranos was the first. That was the great thing. The bad thing that I've heard from a lot of producers is that because it set such a high standard, it's hard to get another mob show on the air.
The bar was
people
set
saying
so
you're
high.
not going to have another Sopranos, and that could be true. I mean, who knows? But it really led the way for all of these brilliant. I tell you, I'm so impressed with the writing and the directing and the storylines on some of these series today. These writers are brilliant. I don't know how they come up with some of these concepts, but they're really brilliant. And Sopranos led the way for all of that, no doubt.
Yeah, they did. They made it safe. They made it a safe place for writers to really explore their real voices without having to be, modified. But a lot of these shows that try to emulate The Sopranos, some of them, we joke around, it's just diet Sopranos. But some of them are fantastic. And there's only a few of them. There's not too many of them. So it's exciting. I'm excited for your story, because it's been a long time.
Yeah.
It's been a long time.
That was awesome.
That was really awesome.
I'm like flipping out a little bit.
I'm on another planet, because that was really cool.
How do I say?
I wish my dad was alive right now to watch this at some point.
He was great. Well, that's it for episode 1, Gangster Goddess. Tune in next week for more Michael.
Franzese.
Franzese.
Or Franzese. I think everybody probably says his name differently. Yeah. Michael, you're going to have to tell us what the right pronunciation is.
Well, next week we're coming back with part B. So tune in then. Don't forget to hit subscribe to Gangster Goddess. Subscribe on YouTube, listen wherever you get your podcasts, and make sure you subscribe and like the episode. Send us an email.
Oh, did you say that we're going to be back with our Soprano rewatch?
I didn't. Why don't you say that?
Yes. Don't worry, guys. We're still a Soprano rewatch. We're just starting with our Busted and Readjusted segments. But yes, episode 1 of season 2 will be coming up shortly.
Yes. Gangster Goddess Broad-cast is a UV Ways and Monkey Mind Music Group production. Produced by Margot Carmichael, executive produced by Drea Chris, and theme song by UV Ways.
machine head.